Welcome to In Search of Excellence, which is about our quest for greatness and our desire to be the very best we can be, to learn, educate, and motivate ourselves to live up to our highest potential. It's about planning for excellence and how we achieve excellence through incredibly hard work, dedication, and perseverance. It's about believing in ourselves and the ability to overcome the many obstacles we all face on our way there. Achieving excellence is our goal, and it's never easy to do. We all have different backgrounds, personalities, and surroundings, and we all have different routes on how we hope and want to get there. Today, my guest is Trina Spear. Trina is the co-founder and CEO of FIGS, a company that reinvented apparel for healthcare professionals by selling fitted, fashionable, cool, and comfortable medical scrubs. FIGS is also the first company ever to go public that is led by two female co-founders and has a current market value of $5.2 billion. In 2018, Trina was named the Los Angeles Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year. And in 2018 and 19, she was named one of Goldman Sachs' 100 Most Intriguing Entrepreneurs. Trina, welcome to In Search of Excellence.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
I always start my podcast with our family because from the moment we're born, our family helps shape our personality, our values, and the preparation for our future. What were your parents like, and what kind of values did they instill in you?
Oh, wow. I don't even know the last time I got asked this question. I came from an amazing family. I mean, my mother was a teacher and my father is a home builder. And they instilled in me values of doing the right thing. Your handshake is your word. My father built his own business. He's an entrepreneur as well, and believes a lot in, doing what you say you're going to do and building relationships. And those are the things that matter. And so both were incredibly influential in my life. My mother, she grew up in Queens, New York, and had, I would say, a harder upbringing and worked her way in her career. And so both were inspirational in different ways.
Let's talk about your early childhood. What were you like as a kid? Were you popular? Were you a leader? And what did you do for fun?
I was not popular. So it's interesting growing up in Miami. Miami is a very diverse and interesting place to grow up. There are people from so many different backgrounds in different countries and speak a number of different languages. And so it's actually an incredible place to grow up. I think for me, being in that environment, I grew up going to public school, and there was a lot of kids in my high school, for instance, over 5,000, kids. So you kind of have to make your way and figure out what makes sense for you. I definitely wasn't popular or cool. I studied and worked hard and played tennis, and that became the thing, that I think I was really, the thing I did outside of school growing up. Was never actually, I was ranked in the state of Florida in tennis, but a lot of the kids that I would play in the USTA against were, actually a lot of people were going pro. So it was interesting growing up in this environment where it was a really big tennis city. But every weekend on these tournaments, I would lose in the first round, which was a really amazing way to get tougher and realize that even if you're not doing well, eventually it will work out, which it did actually. I played in college as well. So, not popular, not cool, but found my way in the tennis world and found my way with, doing well in school.
You obviously were a very competitive tennis player, which meant that you probably took lessons, practice every day. How often did you practice to become a good tennis player? And how did the practice and the repetition improve your discipline going forward?
Yeah, I mean, tennis is an incredible sport because it's one of the few individual sports. And so, being out on the court every single day, you're really on your own and have to figure out how to develop and grow and also win. And so it did fuel my competitiveness, which I am very competitive. But it also helped me to rely on myself. It's one of these, there was nobody else that was going to be able to win that match or win that game. And so it was on me to do so. And I think that teaches you a lot at a young age that, you have to rely on yourself to go out and do big things in the world.
What kind of odd jobs did you have when you were younger?
All of them. But my first real, I guess my first real job, I kind of taught tennis growing up because, you would be playing and then you could make some side money by teaching some of the younger kids tennis. So I did that all throughout my life. And then I worked at Johnny Rockets as a server. So, in high school, which was great. And, there's nothing like that experience. On your feet, running around your little uniform. I had the bow tie. I had the little hat. I danced. If they played Aretha Franklin's "Respect," you would have to go out in the front and dance. So I did that. But it was an awesome experience. I think what it taught me was, what you put in is directly related to what you get out. And so, in that job, I would work the counter, and you immediately, people would come in, they would get their milkshake, they would get their burger, and immediately you would get the tip from that experience. And so, I would come home with like just stashes of cash in my pockets from all the tips that I had made in my shift, which was just a really cool experience.
I was a waiter at the Olive Garden in college, and I had the uniform too. Unfortunately, my tip came at the end, and I once spilled a whole bottle of wine on a family, so that tip didn't go very well. But definitely being a waiter or waitress is a good preparation for your future. It teaches you a lot about immediate customer service and customer feedback.
That's right.
At some point in their lives, almost every successful person I've ever met has a desire to be the best they can be. Some are born with it, and for many, it comes later in life. When did this happen for you?
I hope you're enjoying this video so far, but before we jump back in, I want to know if you've ever thought about what you need to do to reach the next level of success in your life. Over the last 25 years, I've been an advisor to more than 50 companies. I've invested nearly 100, including Google, Lyft, and Seagate, and I also co-founded a company that today is worth more than $15 billion. I've been incredibly blessed in my journey, and at this stage in my life, I want to give back. I want to share the lessons I've learned so you can reach incredible success way faster than I did. In my own journey, I've learned that having the right mentor is a massive advantage to achieving our goals. I'm hugely passionate about mentoring others, and I'm looking for a few hungry entrepreneurs who are excited to take action on their journey to incredible future success. So if that's you, I've got an opportunity. In the description of this video, there's a link where you can apply to work with me. All you need to do is answer a few simple questions, and if you're a good fit, my team will reach out so we can build a game plan together. All right, now let's get back to the video.
Everyone in my family, they call me the sleeper. They were this wasn't obvious. I did well enough. It was always like I did what I needed to do to get by. I wasn't the best student. I did what I needed to do. I was, things came, I don't know, semi-easily to me. I have a pretty photographic memory. So I would be the person who would read the chapter the night before. I would kind of memorize it to take the test and do well enough. And so that was my life. And, went to Tufts, played tennis there, did pretty well there. But it wasn't like I was the star in growing up or in college. But, then I learned a bit about investment banking, and I didn't know about that in growing up or in high school. Not a lot of people in my life had gone into finance or had worked on Wall Street or had worked in investment banking. So I learned about it, I think my junior or senior year at Tufts. And they said, well, it's the job that you'll learn the most in the shortest amount of time. Right. And I said, and so I interviewed it, not knowing much about it. And I got the job at Citigroup in New York City.
Yep.
And, all these other people had come from all these financial backgrounds. And so, I think even then it wasn't really until I think, joining Heather on our mission with Figs that I started realizing that, there was something bigger.
We're going to cover all of these separately, and we'll start with education, which I think is one of the most important ingredients to our future success. As you mentioned, you got a BA at Tufts University, graduated magna cum laude, which is very impressive. A few years later, you went to Harvard for a business degree, which is a little factoid, has only a 12% acceptance rate. I have a couple of questions about education. I want to start with a piece I read in the Wall Street Journal a month ago that described how many employers who traditionally only hired college graduates are now going to hire people who didn't graduate college, or in some cases didn't go to college at all. How important is education to our success and our path to greatness? And do you hire people at Figs without college degrees?
I think education is important in some ways. It teaches you how to think. It teaches you how to socialize as well. College and business school were amazing experiences from meeting people that were set out to do great things in the world. But I do think that you don't really need it to be successful in life. And there are many people at FIGS that don't have college degrees. And I think that, I think the education system, not to get too political, is a bit broken. And there's a lot that isn't being taught across higher education around the country and around the world. But for me, it gave, especially at the beginning, at the early stages of FIGS, when we were raising money, when we were bringing on investors, it definitely gave myself and I think the business credibility. Also, Heather has amazing degrees, and so by having that, I think people they don't know yet what you're going to do, and they don't, and they're putting money behind you. And so that credibility that you're not going to just take that money and fly away to some island and not do anything, I think is alleviated a bit by having, okay, you went to Harvard Business School, you have that degree, and that gave us, I believe, some credibility that helped us raise money, helped us get the business off the ground. And I think that's important.
One of the main reasons, if not the main reason, to get an education is to prepare us for our future. And when we think about college education today, I think many students think about two things: their education in the classroom and their education outside of the classroom. When we think about their education outside of the classroom, most students today are focused about getting summer internships or internships during the year. They want to learn about a business or an industry or make valuable connections for their future. And many students use these internships as building blocks. You get a good one your first summer and another one your second summer, then the most valuable one the summer before your senior year, which is often a tryout. If you have a good summer, you'll probably get a job offer after you graduate. We'll talk about what you did between your first and second summer at Harvard a little later. But for now, can you walk us through what you did each summer while you were at Tufts? Did you have a master plan for your internships? And was it your plan from the start to work in investment banking? And as part of this, what are your views on the importance of internships to our future success?
Sure. So I worked at Morgan Stanley the first few summers at Tufts. And then my third summer, I taught tennis. I don't remember exactly why. I think there was something happening where I needed to be back home. So I did that. And then I went back into finance, working specifically in investment banking after college. But yeah, internships are really great. I think they actually give you that hands-on experience and learning to not only understand how the real world works and what it takes and what, a lot of the different things that businesses are facing. Investment banking is a lot about learning about industries and businesses and how to help companies in a number of different circumstances, whether it's mergers and acquisitions or IPOs or debt deals. That's what I spent my time doing. But internships are a great way to get your feet wet and learn and also build relationships that are going to help you over the long run figure out what you're going to do next. So huge believer in it. Here at FIGS, we hire interns and bring them on. And then, after they graduate, they join us. Many of them join us full time. And it's a great learning for us to get to know them, for them to get to know the business. And then, hopefully they come on full time after graduating.
We have a summer internship program at my investment firm. They all work on my beaches company, Sandy. We're building a Yelp for beaches. And yesterday, two of my former interns made the Forbes under 30 list. So I was very, very proud of them.
That's
a great
awesome.
thing. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really a great thing. So you graduate from Tufts, you get a job at Citigroup where you started out in investment banking, and then you moved into the private equity group. You were there for 4 years. Your career's going extremely well. You're paying a lot of money. And then you decide to go back to school for an MBA, which is expensive. Costs around $150,000 for 2 years, not including the opportunity cost of 2 years of not working. Can you tell us more about your experience in investment banking and private equity and how it prepared you to be an entrepreneur later in your career? And can you tell us why you got an MBA in the first place?
Sure. Working in investment banking and in private equity, were some of the best experiences of my life. And I think more than anything, you're working in a very challenging, fast-paced environment, working with some of the smartest people in the world, and have to learn and think and build models and presentations pretty much on the fly, and learn as you're, it's kind of like flying the plane while you're building it. And that's very much what entrepreneurs do, is figuring out how to build the plane while you fly it. And so, those early experiences in investment banking, I remember, sleeping under my desk in my cubicle, leaving at 3 a.m. to be back at 6 a.m. I was there from 2005 to 2009. And, before the recession, it was just, there were more deals during that time than I think had ever been experienced by any other like analysts kind of coming out of school. So there was just so much to do and so much to learn, and so much to kind of grow from. So it was great. And then I think, 2008, everyone knows what happened. And I was still at Citi and looking around, and, very senior people were leaving who had built their careers and who had been there for 20, 30 years, were walking out with all of their belongings in a box out of the building at 388 Greenwich in Tribeca. And it was an eye-opening experience for somebody in my seat in a relatively junior position, watching that happen. And it kind of gave you this, there's this belief, right? You work so hard, and you do all the right things, and that's your path. And there's not a lot of risk, right? Because if you're smart, you do the work, you'll be successful, and that's the financial path. And then having lived through that recession on the front lines and watching how many lives were changed in an instant at so many banks across all Wall Street was a fascinating experience. And so I knew that, maybe this wasn't for me. And I knew also that I wanted to do something more entrepreneurial, and that nothing is certain, and that no matter what, you might as well be happy, because nothing in this life is certain. And so I took some time and went to business school. I went to Harvard Business School for 2 years. And that time was really meaningful because all of my classmates, we were in that same boat where most of us came from this financial world. The recession hit. We all applied to business school, and that was the class. And our class, we graduated in 2011, started in 2009 and graduated in 2011. Our class had more entrepreneurs than ever before in the history of HBS. And it's because I think of that real shift. And what had happened with Facebook and Google and all what was happening in Silicon Valley, but also was not happening across Wall Street, not only with investment banking, but also with consulting. So you saw all these investment banking consulting jobs kind of, all people kind of going into it go down, and entrepreneurship go up. That being said, to your point, I had a lot of debt, so I couldn't start a company just yet.
We love hiring investment bankers. Back when I started my investment firm, our company had gone public, and I started my own, basically a venture capital firm. And DLJ was the best investment banking firm in Los Angeles. Ken Moelis ran the office, and I hired the two best young analysts in the firm, Soon Fo and Tom Barber. They actually called me. They wrongly thought I had the magic touch, and our company had a ridiculous market value at one point of $35 billion, and it was somewhere around $15 billion when they called me up. I remember one day, Tom Barber, I would get into the office those days at 5:30, 6 at the latest. I remember walking in one day, the lights were on, and Tom's light was on. And I go in there, and his feet are hanging out beneath his desk. That's all I could see. And I thought, oh my God, Tom died last night and he had a heart attack. And when I looked under his desk, he was sleeping on a stack of Wall Street journals under his desk. That was his pillow. And I went in there and I woke him up. I'm like, dude, what are you doing here? Are you okay? What? I said, what is this? He said, oh, I was just studying to learn more about this company that we're looking at. And I told him, listen, this is why I love bankers. They'll just jump on a hand grenade. They just want to learn. But on the other hand, I don't want you to do this anymore. If we have a deal and you need to do this and we have a deadline, that's one thing. But the training is great. Tom, of course, now has his own private equity firm, immensely successful. And Soon Fo, I introduced him to Josh Friedman at Canyon Capital a few years later. He wanted to go into that business, and he retired at 38 years old. So the investment banking business has been good to people who have come through my office, and it's a great background. I want to talk about the internship you had at Zelnick Media between your first and second years at Harvard. For our listeners and viewers who don't know, Zelnick Media is a leading private equity firm that was founded by Strauss Zelnick in 2001. Today, it manages $25 billion in assets. In addition to Strauss's duties at Zelnick Media, he is also the current chairman and CEO of Take-Two Interactive, a video game company that had over $3 billion in revenue last year. Today, it has a market cap of $22 billion. Strauss is also the former CEO of BMG, the former chairman of CBS, the former president and COO of Fox, which he had that job when he was 30 years old. And in addition to all this, he's been a friend, a good friend for 26 years. I met him through a cold letter when I was wanting to meet people. It's been 11 years since you spent a summer there. And I asked him if he remembered you. And if so, what he thought of you. And he had this to say about you. He said he remembered you well and that you were not only one of his best all-time summer associates, but you stood out as a truly wonderful person. He said they had tried to hire you and convince you to join ZMC and that you had a great entrepreneurial vision. You didn't want to join. He also went on to say that he was pretty sure he warned you about getting into the apparel business and told you that scrubs were a small niche of that business. But he also encouraged you to follow your dream and told you that you were so talented that he was pretty sure you'd be successful.
Oh, that's awesome. No, I love Strauss. He's been he was an incredible mentor during the time that I worked there and has continued to be. And I just think he's, he had really impacted so many different industries, right? From entertainment to music to gaming to all facets across just industries in general with his own firm. And so it was a pleasure to work at Zelnick Media, and it was a pleasure to work for him and a lot of the people that he brought on there. So that's awesome to hear him say those kind words. And he did. Yeah, I was trying to convince him to invest. I think he regrets that now. Not, but I remember going to his office and pitching him, and he's like, I don't know about this, but good thing he was wrong about that.
He's a great investor, by the way.
Yes.
I did offer him the opportunity to invest in our company as well, Akamai, and he would have done very well on that one too. But he's done okay on his own. The first time I met him, he was talking at the Bear Stearns Media Conference in 1996, and I went down there. I wrote letters. I was a lawyer, hated my job, and I wanted to meet all these people. And so I wrote him a letter. He spoke, and then he had the massive crowd that followed him out. I said, excuse me. I said, I'm Randy Kaplan. I'd written him a letter beforehand, so he may have seen it. And he said, I'm running out the door. I'll call you when I get back to New York. I think he was flying out right afterward. And so I go to meet him. He's the CEO. He's in LA. And I remember him, most people, I met CEOs of very large companies. I wrote a lot of letters. I got a lot of meetings. And most people keep you waiting for a while. They don't care. You're last on the list. And he comes out. He's 3 minutes late. He's on the phone. He covers the phone. He said, I'm sorry, I'm 3 minutes late. And he goes back into his office. And it's just the kind of person he is. He's the only person, and I think the world, who would have done that. It's crazy, but he's been a great role model for me as well. And I know you're lucky to have him as a mentor, and I'm lucky as well. He was also on my podcast. So you have incredibly high praise from a rock star. Here you are, you're at Harvard, you're figuring out what you want to do. You had a chance to join him as a small private equity firm. He thinks the world of you. It's an amazing place to be. It's really a dream to most people. As the firm grows, you grow with it, which means more money, a bigger share of the profits. And then one morning in June 2012, one of your friends on Wall Street introduced you to a woman named Heather Hasson. Heather has a background in fashion, had a business idea that was born from two things. First, a corpse at the University of Wisconsin. My daughter goes there, where she was once a pre-med student. And second, many years by a question to help friend find more flattering work clothes. So your friend introduced you to Heather, you have a phone call with her, and it goes extremely well. So much so that when you hung up, you immediately booked a flight to LA to meet her. Can you take us back to what the question to Heather was, your phone call with her, your excitement, what you were thinking on the 6-hour plane ride, and then what happened when the two of you met in person? As part of this, can you tell us about your tennis game, the parking lots, your...
Now I can glorify it all, but it wasn't all fun. But
I've been there.
But it was, it was an incredible time. I think I was in my late 20s and I was working at Blackstone, and I knew that there was something bigger, and I knew that there had to be something where I felt more fulfilled. As much as I was challenged and enjoyed the work, I felt like there was something out there that would be more fulfilling on a day-to-day basis. And so I remember Heather and I talked on the phone, and she was telling me about this meeting she had over coffee with a friend of hers about a year prior. And she was sitting there with Allison, her friend who's a nurse, and her friend was complaining about these big boxy scrubs that were itchy and scratchy and had the size on the back of her neck. Actually, she was sitting there and her friend was wearing these scrubs that were just awful. And Heather said, I'm the best shopper in the world. I'll find you better scrubs. And she sought out to find her friend better scrubs. And she went to one of these stores where they're sold, and there were racks and racks and racks of scrubs next to, bedpans and knee braces. And Heather thought to herself, why not only is the product so bad, but why is the experience not great? Why, medical professionals, doctors and nurses and other types of medical professionals are walking into this store and this is the experience. And she thought, there's these multi-billion-dollar athletic companies that are so focused on the athlete and making really technical products so you could run around a track faster and swim across a lane. What about the people saving lives? And so we talked about that and how there was nobody focused on these people and how important healthcare professionals are in all of our lives. And so after that conversation, I booked a flight, and we spent a weekend getting to know each other better. We played tennis, and I won, and that was the seal of the deal on the business partnership. And we talked about how this industry was just so broken, and it was because of this real problem from a distribution model perspective, where you had all of these kind of companies that were licenses of other companies, right? Taking fabric off a wall, slapping a label on it, and selling it to a retailer. And then the retailer, even though 85% of healthcare professionals buy their own uniforms, it's actually, the retailer that's selling it. So it's a bit like a B2B model that was, even though it's a B2C industry. So the retailer is selling it to the end customer, the healthcare professional. And so it was just really broken on a whole host of ways, from product to distribution. And, I had this background in finance, and we talked about how we could build out a really strong plan around what we would do going forward. And so from there, I would, she liked to joke, she thinks that I came from this fancy world of Harvard and Blackstone. She's like, all right, you want to join me in this? We're going to sell scrubs out of my car. And so we would, I would fly out to LA before leaving Blackstone, and we would sell scrubs at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. when the healthcare professionals, doctors, nurses, all different types of healthcare professionals were changing shifts. And we were, selling scrubs out of the car, and they would say, wow, these are so much better, because we were really focused on comfort and design and functionality and fabric technology, which hadn't existed in scrubs to date. And so we did that. And then I left Blackstone in January of 2013. And the rest is history, but those were the early days.
I had a similar experience. I was working at Sun America. I was the assistant to the chairman. Eli Broad was my boss. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I had a t-shirt business in college. I looked around at a bunch of different things that year. I told Eli that I wanted to leave. I wanted to have my own business. He said, you're making a mistake. Of course, he sold the company 8 months later, full vesting event for $18 billion. So I lost $2.5 million of publicly traded options, which is an oops. But we invented this technology to serve web content better, faster, cheaper, and more reliably. The company has created that market. It serves around 30% of the world's web traffic. But back then, we were four guys: a professor, a PhD student, a first-year business school student. I was the only one with any business background. And it was basically a bunch of math formulas. We started with 4 computers in a professor's office. That's our network. We were asking companies like Disney and the largest websites, CNN, Yahoo, to let us serve their live traffic for them. And when I hear the parking lot, which is proof of concept, people are actually buying this. What made it for me was we'd go into these meetings, and because of my letter writing campaign, I knew people at all these companies, very senior people. And when I was 26 years old and really nothing, a lawyer, no one, I was last on their list. Then I know that I got this great job working for someone of credibility, and I kept in touch with all these people. So I'd get the meeting, and I wasn't sure whether I was going to join. I wasn't going to join the company in Boston. There was no way I was moving there. And we'd get these meetings with mid-level managers. It's just, okay, Randy, I'll set you up with someone. And every time people kept coming into the room. So it'd be a manager, a senior manager, a director, VP, senior VP, and then the CTO came in every single time. You could see the light bulb pop off in their head. And that was what gave me the impetus to join. It took me 8 months to quit my job and, to do that. What's interesting about the story that you tell also, you're in a parking lot and you're selling scrubs from your car. You're accosting people who have either woken up at 4, 5, or late as 6 in the morning, hit their coffee. They're going to work a 12-hour day, and you're coming up to them like someone at the beach where you've got headphones on, but it's even worse because they're going to a tough day at a hospital, or they're coming out of a hospital and they've been there a 12-hour, 16-hour shift, and there you are. Hey, will you talk to me? I mean, the cold calling skill has been invaluable to a lot of people in their career. It's been invaluable to me. It helped make my career. It did make my career. Did you have any sales experience before this? You had a traditional background. You were an investment banker. How important is that in our path to excellence?
Oh, it's so important. I mean, I've developed, I really worked hard to develop communication skills over time. But if you're not, selling what you believe in some way, and selling or sales gets kind of a bad rap, it's really convincing somebody of something that you think they need. And it wasn't a hard sell, right? Because the alternative was just so awful. But I do think, having the ability to communicate a value proposition, having the ability to talk about how you can change someone's life and how you could provide them with a better product and a better experience is really important. And I think, we also did a few things that I think was helpful. So we would go to Starbucks and we would buy this super huge jugs. And so if you're coming off the night shift and, and someone hands you a warm hot cocoa or a hot cup of coffee, healthcare professionals are the most grateful people in the world. And so it really endeared them to us and us to them. And so it's also that. It's also understanding as people are coming in and coming out, what matters to them, how do you relate, and having those conversations. I mean, we spend a lot of conversations inside the hospital in the cafeteria. We would put on our scrubs, pretend we were healthcare professionals, and just sit right there at the table and ask them what they liked and what they didn't like, and what bothered them, and about the uniforms they were wearing every single day. So you get to know people, and people are, especially healthcare professionals, are incredibly generous people, generous with their time and their views, and they're so smart, and they wanted to, even at the early days, they were so helpful to us.
Do you know what your total revenues were and how many pairs of scrubs you sold before you said, all right, I'm doing this?
Oh, I mean, it was essentially, I don't know, 30 grand.
It's something, and it's proof of concept.
Yeah. Yeah.
Most disruptor stories start with a dying business model. Let's talk a little bit more about the importance of not resting on our laurels, the need to constantly innovate, the importance of staying ahead, and how important these are on our path to excellence. You're not a doctor or a medical professional. You don't have a design background. You did not work at LVMH or another clothing company. There are 20 million Americans who are part of the healthcare industry in the United States. It's the nation's largest employer. Scrubs are a daily necessity. And before you started FIGS, there were a dozen or so family-owned medical apparel companies, which dominated the $10 billion medical apparel industry in the United States, as well as the $72 billion business outside of the United States. These are companies that employ many thousands of people, probably tens of thousands of people. And you would think that at least one of the tens of millions of medical professionals around the world who complain about their scrubs. Two colors, blue and green, loose fitting, ugly, would have come up with the same idea to reinvent them the way that you did with Heather. But not a single person did. Or if they did, they didn't do anything about it. Or they went to their employers who also did nothing about it. If it ain't broken, why fix it? We all saw the same thing with Uber. Travis had no experience in the taxi business, which around the world employed millions of drivers. And he took an industry where hundreds of millions of customers didn't like the service and product they were getting. What you did and what Travis did and what thousands of other young entrepreneurs have done, it's counterintuitive. So here's the question. Does it take an outsider with no experience in a particular industry to innovate? What's your message to our listeners and viewers today who have a great idea, who have no experience in an industry and are afraid to take on 50-year-old companies with 100% market share?
I think it's very helpful to be an outsider and not know the playbook, not know the rules, not know what is how it works in a way. Not that we didn't learn it, right? We didn't try to understand how it works so we could change it. But I think it's that mindset of coming at it with a different perspective, with no preconceived notions of what it should be or how it should work. I mean, even now, right? Somebody says, well, this is the way this industry works, or this is the way that works. They don't last long here. So I think it is that mentality of coming at with fresh eyes and saying, and that was the question Heather asked herself. Why were all these multi-billion-dollar companies so focused on athletes? What about the people saving lives? What about them? What about the people caring for patients all day? They're on their feet for 16 hours a day, running around, sweating, and interacting with, incredible environments of different types of liquids and fluids, as you can imagine. So, it was that question and coming with curiosity of continuously asking questions. What do you need? What do you like? How does it work? What would be helpful to you? And I think it's that outside mentality. I think experts oftentimes are people that have been in industries or at companies for a very long time, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, stop asking those questions and rely too much on what they have experienced before. And, we didn't have enough experience to know how it should work. And so there's two things I'll say. If you don't know there's a wall, you could run right through it. If you don't know there's a wall in front of you, you could run right through it. And then the other thing I'll say is, coming from an outside view and not knowing how hard it's going to be, or not knowing the trip or the things that you might trip on, is incredibly helpful. Like if it was easy, everyone would do it. If it was easy, everyone would do it. And it's really hard, right? To build a business and create a category and completely change how an industry works. Like Elon Musk talks about like eating glass every day. Like, what advice he got the question, what advice do you have to entrepreneurs? And he said, if you need advice, don't become an entrepreneur. If you want positive reinforcement, don't do it. It's like that level of, just going at it every single day with a singular focus and mission, which is what we have here.
I've been an advisor to a bunch of companies over the years. I'm an advisor to a few right now. And it's better to be an advisor to a company that you know nothing about the industry, because they already have 5 advisors who know things about that industry. So I like being an advisor knowing nothing about it. I served on a public company board in the telecommunications space, and a hedge fund wanted me to do it. I had a legal background, although I know nothing about practicing law. I have a financial background, which was also helpful, but I knew nothing about this. And I told them that when they called me on the phone. They said, we want you to be our board member. And I said, it's just, I don't know. And it was very helpful. I was the only member of the board who didn't have a telecom background. It was very helpful for the company, frankly. And what's interesting now, as a venture capitalist, I have been on a bunch of advisory boards where I don't put in my own money. And I tell people sometimes, it's not that I'm not interested in what you're doing, but I can give better objective feedback, advice, where I'm not also conflicted partially with my pocketbook, doing the best thing for it. It's hard to separate that sometimes. So let's move on to the direct-to-consumer model. When you eliminate the middleman, your gross margins are higher. You can also market directly to your customers and control all aspects of the shopping experience. How does this improve customer experience and the customer data you collect help you as a company? And how important is this data and the customer experience to your future growth?
Sure. I mean, I think it's interesting because at the core, you mentioned customer experience and showing up for your customers, or we think about our community all the time and what they need. And, at the core of what we're doing, direct to consumer makes more sense, I think, in our industry versus any other. Because if you're working for 12-hour shifts, 16-hour shifts, sometimes even longer, and you are, when you're not at work, you're with your family or with your friends, the last thing you want to do is get in your car and drive to a store in a strip mall where the store closes at 5 p.m. By the way, your shift is you're off at 7. So it doesn't even make the times that the stores are open doesn't even make any sense. So being a direct-to-consumer digital company is really important. It's not even like a nice to have, like, e-commerce now, you get your stuff online, during this pandemic, you get everything delivered to your door. That's a nice to have. That's a luxury. For our industry, direct-to-consumer is a have to have. It's a must. For our healthcare professionals that have dedicated their lives to helping all of us. So yes, from a why does this make sense for our community? It's so important to have that ease, to have that seamlessness, and for people to get their uniform so they can go to work and do their job. And then from a margin perspective, I'm a finance geek, so we could talk about that too. We were able to elevate the product beyond what this industry had ever seen. Because if you were one of these companies, you're giving 60% margin away to the retailer, you're giving a 10% royalty fee to the license holder, and it gave them no room from a P&L perspective to elevate their product. So their COGS, they cannot increase because their margins are too slim. And so from our perspective, it was about, building a product that incorporated all the features and functionality that healthcare professionals need to do their jobs. And it was creating the highest quality. It's about creating the highest quality medical apparel in the world with a focus on fit and functionality and comfort and technical properties. But that's expensive, right? So in order to do that, we had to go direct to consumer. In order to make the business model sustainable, it had to be direct to consumer. And so, it all kind of came into focus from a product standpoint, from a distribution standpoint, from the community perspective, branding this unbranded industry, decommoditizing a commodity product, and building a community around a profession, which is all of which we've done, is because it's direct to consumer and we were able to completely change the game on the product side.
Let's talk about the evolution of the direct-to-consumer model. In March of 2018, you became the first ever medical apparel company to open up a pop-up shop, and you did so on the trendy Melrose Avenue in LA alongside stores like Marc Jacobs and Theory. Until then, all of your sales had been online. 98% are still online. But there have been many other successful brands that started as DTC companies that now have retail stores, companies like Casper, Allbirds, and the most famous one, Warby Parker. 8 years ago, I was at a dinner, sat next to Neil Blumenthal, the co-CEO and co-founder of Warby Parker. And the year earlier, they had opened up their first big and expensive flagship store on Green Street in Soho. And I asked why the switch. And he said that when they started the company in 2010, Facebook ads were expensive. But in the following years, they had become substantially more expensive. And the same was true with Google ads. All of which it meant it had become less expensive to have bricks and mortar stores than an online store. Is this part of the future of FIGS?
So I think we have a different dynamic, just given the industry we're in and given what we do. So why is it that we're at the scale that we are and we are essentially 100% digital today? It is because I'm not paying rent the way other companies are to Facebook and Google, because so much of my business was organic via word of mouth. So all of my healthcare professionals are within a hospital, within a healthcare institution, and they're talking to each other in the lobby, in the Starbucks getting their coffee, right? They're passing each other on their way to their next patient. They're talking to each other in the break room, not only about, their work, but also about what did Figs just launch? What are our latest colors? What are our latest styles? And it's really exciting. And so every Figs customer is kind of acquiring that next customer for us. And so I think the difference with Figs is that, retail is really exciting. It's great, but it's not something that we need to do because of the dynamics that I talked about in terms of how our healthcare professionals like to get their scrubs, their uniform, their underscrubs, their fleeces, their vests, all the different compression socks, all the different products that we offer. So it really does make sense to be an e-commerce digital company. That being said, we have had pop-up shops on Melrose and you mentioned on Crosby Street. They were awesome. We had lines around the block. We'll continue to do that. It's exciting. We're going to do it near hospitals where it's easy. Once again, it's all about ease and convenience. You run in, you get your uniform, and you go. But I think it's that balance of being able to really have both, and all of the companies you mentioned do, but not being reliant on any of them to continue to grow and scale and do the things you want to do.
I had my teeth cleaned yesterday, and I go into the dentist, and the hygienist says, "Hi, Randy. Hi, Sheila." I said, "Are those Figs you're wearing?" I could see the little logo on the bottom, and I've been looking for Figs since we scheduled the podcast. I've been trying to find someone who actually was wearing them. "Oh, yeah, these are Figs." They were pink, and they were cool. They fitted her very nicely, had a nice slim fit. And I said, "What do you think about scrubs?" She said, "Oh, my gosh. I was the first class at USC. I was an ambassador. I lobbied for the school to give us the scrubs. I guess they were free, but then she explained it was part of the tuition. All of her friends lived it." And she said to me, "I've got a problem." And I said, "Oh, are you okay?" She said, "No, I've got a Figs problem. I buy every color and I can't stop." So I said, "Figs Anonymous." She said, "I need Figs Anonymous." So I thought,
that's an Instagram account, by the way.
I thought, yeah. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I said, "I'm talking to Trina tomorrow, and I'm going to learn more about Figs." So she said, "I'm definitely going to tune into that podcast." So
that's
I'm
awesome.
telling you things that you already know. Let's talk about your funding. When we get going, we make sacrifices. You liquidated your 401k to get started. I know what that's like from a tax perspective. You pay an extra tax to take it out before you're 62 and a half or 59 and a half, depending what the law is at a particular time. You raised $2 million in 2013, the purpose of which was so you didn't run out of inventory, another $3 million in 2014 and 15, then another $5 million Series A round led by Campfire Capital, a Vancouver-based VC firm who had a partner there named Christine Day, who is the CEO of Lululemon from 2008 through 2013, which had a market cap of $7.26 billion to be exact when she left the company. How important was it to you in your personal development and to the company's progress to have an experienced advisor and mentor like Christine on your team? And what's your advice on this front to other entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to have people around you that have been in the seat and have done it. And we look to surround ourselves with people, really outside of this industry. We don't have mentors within it because we are changing it. So you don't want you don't want to be too influenced by what the status quo is. But having people like Christine and others that have helped build successful businesses is really important. And so I think there was a lot of learnings from the Lululemon story. Even Chip Wilson, the founder, and we know him as well, and he's incredible. And seeing how businesses are built in different eras, in different decades, at different times, with different ways of going to market, different ways of connecting with a community. I think there's a number of different examples of that being done very well. And I study it. I study other businesses and industries, and it is very helpful, whether you want to do it differently or there are certain things that you think could be applicable. And I think whether it's, how Nike was built, how Lululemon was built, how Uber, to your point, was built, how Coinbase was built. There's so many interesting, cool things happening in the world. And if you pay attention, you could learn a lot. And it's awesome to see all the change and how exponential, the world has moved because of technology and because of so many of these industries changing, including ours.
I hope you're enjoying this video so far, but before we jump back in, I want to know if you've ever thought about what you need to do to reach the next level of success in your life. Over the last 25 years, I've been an advisor to more than 50 companies. I've invested nearly 100, including Google, Lyft, and Seagate, and I also co-founded a company that today is worth more than $15 billion. I've been incredibly blessed in my journey, and at this stage in my life, I want to give back. I want to share the lessons I've learned so you can reach incredible success way faster than I did. In my own journey, I've learned that having the right mentor is a massive advantage to achieving our goals. I'm hugely passionate about mentoring others, and I'm looking for a few hungry entrepreneurs who are excited to take action on their journey to incredible future success. So if that's you, I've got an opportunity. In the description of this video, there's a link where you can apply to work with me. All you need to do is answer a few simple questions, and if you're a good fit, my team will reach out so we can build a game plan together. All right, now let's get back to the video.
I want to talk about your last round of funding and your IPO. In May 2018, a guy named Thomas Tall invested $50 million in Figs and became its majority owner. Thomas had been the founder and CEO of Legendary Pictures, a movie production company and media company, which he sold 2 years before for $3.5 billion. On May 27th of this year, only 3 years after his investment, Figs went public. And your IPO was groundbreaking in a few ways. You were the first company ever to go public, led by two female co-founders. And while Goldman Sachs led your IPO, you were also the first company in history to offer shares of an IPO on Robinhood, which sold 1% of these shares to its investors. When you rung the bell on the New York Stock Exchange, you invited more than 60 healthcare professionals to join you, people you call awesome humans. And when the market closed that day, Figs was worth $4.4 billion. Tell us, what were you feeling that day as you stood up there and rang the bell with people surrounding you? Was this the culmination of a dream? Was going public and creating a company of this size on your bucket list? And how important was it to you to be the first company in history to go public with two female co-founders?
Oh, there's a lot of questions in that. Okay, I'll try to hit them all. I don't think we ever thought about this as, one day we'll be a public company. I think we have been so maniacally focused on serving and celebrating and supporting and empowering the healthcare professional, the healthcare community. And so this was a milestone along that journey. And we felt really that our IPO was a moment for the whole world to get behind this community. And that's why we did it. It's not like, oh, okay, did that, now we're done. We feel like we're just getting started. And so, that's why we invited all of our people, our awesome humans, to the New York Stock Exchange, and we had an awesome party that night with all of them. But it's about that. It's about getting the world behind them, getting little boys and girls in across this country to look up and be inspired. We put our awesome humans on billboards across the country, and so look up and be inspired that one day, not only will I want to be like Tom Brady or Serena Williams, or athletes are amazing, but I also will want to look up and be like be a healthcare professional one day. And if we can inspire the next generation to become healthcare professionals, I think we'll all be better off. So that's what our IPO is about. I think in terms of us being the first female co-founders and co-CEOs, I think it was like a few weeks before the IPO, someone told us that, and we hadn't really thought about it. And they said, that's pretty cool. And people started talking about it. And, I think we never were, we're women, we're this, we're that. I think it's pretty cool. And we looked and we're excited by being role models for young female entrepreneurs specifically. And we're embracing it more and getting more comfortable with that. But it is cool. And I do think it shows that, you can do anything you put your mind to. And if you believe in something bigger than yourself, everything is possible. And so that's our story. And hopefully it does inspire others to do the same.
I want to go back for a minute and talk about Thomas Tall. I think I told you when I met you, I met Thomas well before he moved to LA. He was working at an investment firm and came out to LA through a friend. He had tickets to a movie premiere. Weirdly, he picked me up in a limo and I get car sick and I have a long driveway and I couldn't get in the car. So I sat with the driver with the thing up and the window open while he and my friend Len were in the back seat. But it was amazing because he said he was going to move out here and get into the movie business. He loved the movies, and you look at what he's done. And I think he's the nicest guy. We're not in touch, but I am going to get him on my podcast. So he invested $50 million. And then when you went public, the $50 million is worth $2.5 billion. And it's very rare to sell that much of the company, especially when things are going well. Why did you sell so much of the company? And do you regret selling that much at that time?
Bringing Thomas on board was an incredible decision, and he's been an amazing partner, not only to me and to Heather and to our entire team, but to this business, and really saw the vision, and he saw he saw what this could be. And Thomas is the ultimate entrepreneur. He's the person saying, whatever you just said, let's multiply it by 10, let's multiply it by 100. And having somebody behind you with that level of belief in what you're doing is awesome. And so I have nothing but incredible things to say about Thomas and our partnership. I think, and I think, we're really proud to be able to say that anybody who invested in this business did very well. When you take people's money, you have a fiscal responsibility. That's a lot, right? Of saying we're going to go out and do something great with this, and we are proud to say that everybody who invested in Figs at some point made multiples of their money, and so it's awesome. And then the last thing I'll say about that is it's a bit, the IPO was good in a way because it's like everyone did well. And now if you're not happy, you could sell the stock. And if you're happy, you could buy more, right? Like there is this level of come on board and join us for this next incredible phase of growth and innovation. But I almost feel like there's more pressure as a private company in a way, right? Because you gotta make everyone whole.
How did Thomas find you, or how did you find Thomas?
One of our early investors knew him. I think they had actually grown up together. And so he introduced us. And so an investor that was in our seed round introduced us to Thomas, and we met him. And, Thomas had, this was while he was at Legendary, he had his vision for his fund, which was essentially take old industries, you put better people, process, and technology, and you can uproot an industry with one company. Warren Buffett's model was you had to roll up a bunch of companies and eventually take over an industry. And you could now do that with technology and AI with one company, which is essentially, what Uber did with the taxi industry. And it's what we've done with the healthcare apparel industry. And you're seeing it across insurance and waste management and, document storage. You're seeing it across everything. And so I think that thesis is incredibly powerful. Thomas is a visionary. He saw what we were doing and thought it was really interesting. And he invested in our Series A, and then we went on to do that larger deal. But, it really worked out well.
In our search for excellence, one of the requirements for greatness is our ability to overcome the many challenges and obstacles we all face. And I want to talk about two of yours. Early on in the company, you had a huge issue with your production. You accidentally swapped the inseams of your pants. So your men's pants had a women's inseam. It was your first production run. By the way, this sounds so uncomfortable. It was your first production run, and you had put all of your money into the company. Again, you had liquidated your 401k. The total loss of the company was $100,000, which at the time was a ton of money to you. You didn't know if you would recover. That was one challenge. Then in October of 2020, you had another big one. The video featured a young woman in hot pink comfort scrubs reading a book called Medical Terminology for Dummies. The book was upside down, and the camera then zoomed in to a close-up of the model's drawstring scrubs that featured a mock-up hospital badge reading DO, short for Doctor of Osteopathic Medicine, a job which takes a more holistic approach to disease as opposed to doctors with MD degrees. Many thousand medical professionals lashed out at you for the as portrayal of women doctors, specifically DOs, for being less educated or incompetent. You took the video down, and you and Heather apologized for it, saying, "We dropped the ball and we are so sorry." How important is it to admit our mistakes and learn from our mistakes?
Oh, yeah. I mean, both of those times were incredibly challenging personally, but the second one was devastating. I mean, personally devastating because as, female founders of this business who have faced our own times where we were, thought as of being, and this is in quotes, a dumb girl or what have you. It was not who we are. It is not what this company stands for. And it's not actually why the company was founded in the first place. The whole reason for this company is to empower our healthcare professionals and put them up on pedestals and say, you are the people that are doing the world's most important work. So, that was not, it was not a representation of what we aim to do here every day. But to your point, it's really important to apologize. And we had, at this point, thousands of conversations, many one-on-one with our healthcare community and heard and listened to how much we hurt people. And when you hurt people, especially the people that are in our society, literally have dedicated their lives to us, it was really hard. But it's important to say, we're all human beings, and sometimes we make mistakes. And when you make a mistake, you own up to it and you stand back up and you get back at it and you do better the next day. And that's what we continue to do. We might fall down again, definitely not anywhere close to what happened here. But we're all human, and you got to just keep fighting and keep doing the best you can.
You just touched upon it a little bit, but I want to delve more into it. It's been an important topic, which we've been very focused on at my investment firm, Jump Investors, since I started 20 years ago, but which has been gaining a lot more attention in the past few years, the number of women in venture capital. And let's start with some stats on this one. In 2017, only 2% of the $85 billion in venture capital went to women. In 2019, the number was 2.8%. In 2020, the number fell back down to 2.3%. Women also raised smaller amounts of financings than men. Women average $5 million per round, while men average $12 million per round. And here are some stats for women working in venture capital firms. Only about 12% of decision makers at VC firms are women, and most firms still don't have a single female partner. Of all partners at these firms, only 2.4% are female founding partners. When women venture capitalists do make funding decisions, they're twice as likely to invest in female founding teams. And here's another interesting stat. When women-led startups get funded, they're more likely to be successful. We have a number of portfolios, another companies in our portfolio with women founders, and they're killing it. I'm also an investor in Jesse Draper's fund, Halogen Ventures, which invests only in companies with women founders, and she's killing it. What can we do to reverse this trend?
Keep investing in women. I think we're proving it that we can build big businesses and build sustainable businesses. I think growth for growth's sake, and you see it, right? Oftentimes that doesn't work out. And, we're extremely proud not only of our growth, but also our profitability. And not to say if we weren't women that could be the case, but I do think there was never this like endless flow of money, right? We never knew when we were going to raise that next check. We never knew when we were going to get that next investor on board because it was really hard. We got so many no's. And those no's fuel you. Those no's fuel you to build a business where you can control your destiny. And how do you control your destiny? You become profitable. You don't need anybody once you're a profitable business, which is what we are. So I think there's a lot to controlling your own destiny, writing your own script. And as women, where maybe it is harder for whatever reason, although I would urge all women listening to this to not ever think about it. Because if you think about it, it gets in your head and then it changes how you operate. So don't think about other people's potential biases. Only think about how can I take those biases and internalize to get better? And so I think that's like my big takeaway from this is that, we just, in order to change it, we actually have to continue to do big things and change industries and and make people a lot of money because, you look at our story and you go, wow, how do I become Thomas Tull? Well, in order to become Thomas Tull and make the return that he made, you got to invest in more women. So I think that's what it's about. And, and I love mentoring and investing in female entrepreneurs. It's my biggest passion is doing that. And so, I think that you're going to see a big change, and those numbers are going to start changing.
I had Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank on my show 2 weeks ago, and he said, let me tell everyone a little secret. 70% of his investment returns in the last 10 years came from women founders. So it's something we're going to continue to do, and I hope many more venture capitalists also continue to do. Let's talk about the value of work ethic. Could you give us a sense of the kind of the hours you were working from the beginning of your career when you were at Citigroup and Blackstone to the kinds that you're working now as a public company? And how important is work ethic to our path to excellence?
I've always worked really hard. Investment banking, that's the culture, is working really late, and there's just so much to do. And there's a lot put on you as a young person, which is why you learn so much, why the learning curve is so steep. And I don't know, I think I was working 16, 18 hours a day. And you fit in lunch and dinner along the way, and a lot of caffeine. But I think, that it's those moments, right, where you figure out what you're made of, and you figure out what you're capable of. And you start really believing in yourself. You asked that question earlier, like, when did you know? It's like, when you do something that you didn't think you could do, and you actually get it done, and you get it done right, and you get it done well, those are the moments that you start building the components that of this is what I'm made of, and now I can go out and do something even bigger than I thought possible. And so, I think, for me, work ethic is really important. We always talk about, if it was easy, everyone would do it. It's the hard that makes it great. Do the things others aren't willing to do. As everyone else is like, oh, it's Friday, let me ease up. That's the opportunity. That's the opportunity to go in when everyone's sleeping, when everyone's winding down, to gear up, right? And how you do anything is how you do everything. It's those little details that add up to the big stuff. Caring more than anyone else, because if you care more than anyone else, you're going to find those things and unlock those moments that change the game. And so working hard isn't just for the sake of it. It's for, you're able to see the world in so many different ways and unlock so many different opportunities when you're in it at that level. And so that's what I look to do.
You have work ethic. What are the other ingredients to success?
Thinking differently, creating the world you want to live in. On Wall Street, it was a very specific type of world, right? A lot of men, I love men, nothing against men. A lot of the culture is kind of specific to Wall Street, and most people know what that looks like. And when you start your own company, you get to define what that world is. You get to define that culture. And so it's about figuring out what you value and what makes sense for you and those around you, and building it the way you want to see the world going forward, and creating that future, and defining it. And so that's a big piece. And then, impact, making other people feel good, believing in people so that they can go out and do that. And so for us, it's about believing in our team, believing in them more than maybe they even believed in themselves, tapping into the potential of the human spirit and human possibility, and then giving back. I mean, so much of how we think about is, how do you give to people, whether it's your team, whether it's the community you're serving, whether it's to people around the world. We have a huge initiative where we give back and donate healthcare apparel to people around the world. How can you give without any expectation of anything in return? And that's the true definition of success, is when you're able to not just give before you take. There's a great book, Give and Take, by Adam Grant. You should read that.
Sitting right behind me.
Okay. Yeah. I love him.
Amazing.
And so that giving without any expectation of anything in return is what creates obsessive loyalty amongst a company and a community. And that's what we're doing. And so I think that's really at the heart of it, what it's all about.
You're 38 years old. You've made a tremendous amount of money. When our company went public, I hated when people talked about this, by the way, and nobody would have known because I wasn't at the company anymore, but I was in the S1, so I really hated people focusing on this. But you were just in Forbes, so we're going to talk about it for a second. You're number 52 on the Forbes list of America's richest self-made women. You're worth several $100 million. Was that part of the dream when you were growing up or in college when you began the business? I do a lot of coaching, and I ask people, what are the 5 most important things to you that you're looking for your next job? Money's number one every single time. Enjoyment is not even on the list over 75% of the time. What's your advice to others where money is their primary goal?
I think if money is your primary goal, it's actually going to be hard to go and make a lot of money. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's just my experience with it. I think you really have to love what you're doing. You need to be passionate about it. And I think you need to think a little bit bigger beyond yourself, right? And I think money is a function of how many people you impact. And if you are focused solely on yourself, you're not going to be very great at impacting others. And so it's almost like this, I don't know, you kind of have to go outside yourself and make that. But I understand why money is important to people. For me, it's freedom and it's security. And that's, I think, a human need where people want to be able to back to controlling your own destiny. It's why we wanted the company to be successful, so that we can control our own destiny and make as big of an impact as possible. And so it's tied, but it's how you tie it. Don't make it front and center, because it's going to be harder to get to where you want to go.
I think it's really important to enjoy the fruits of our hard work. When I was young and didn't have any money, I'd go into the Porsche dealership once a year and I'd sit in a 911 convertible. That was my dream car. And I'd think, one day I'm going to buy one. I did this for more than 10 years. And when Akamai went public in 1999, here it was. I went to the dealership ready to buy one. I sat in the car thinking about it for about 20 minutes, could finally afford it. And I walked out without buying one. The car was $100,000, $107,000 to be exact. And I felt guilty spending so much money, and I wanted to think about it a little more. I thought about it a lot over the next 6 months, telling myself I had worked so hard for so long, 70-hour weeks, 100-hour weeks sometimes, telling myself I deserve that car. And 6 months later, I went back, I bought that car. It's the year 2000. I still have it. I'm never going to sell it. To me, it's a representation of all of that hard work. And there isn't a single day that I get inside that car that I don't think about the hours I put in and the sacrifices I made to buy it. Mm. After you went public, did you treat yourself to anything special?
I bought my parents a house, and that was the moment. You know, I don't have a lot of needs, and I wish I did. Like I don't have a ton of outside hobbies that where I'm like, oh, I want this or that. But being able to help my family was really important to me, and being able to do that, I'm glad I was able to do that. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I probably bought a watch or something, which was cool for myself.
My grandmother grew up in foster care. She turned 103 a few weeks ago on November 2nd. And the first thing I did is I bought her a car, and I said to her, I said, Nana, go buy any car you want. Okay, you can go do anything you want. She had no money. And I said, really, like, I just want you to get a nice car. And I said, call me from the dealership. I'm not going to negotiate with anyone. I'm just going to wire them the money if it's before noon our time in Los Angeles. So she calls me up, and I really had to push her. I said, Nana, what's up? So she finally calls me from the dealership. She's with my uncle. She said, I found the car. I said, all right, I'm at the Toyota dealership. I'm like, okay. I thought we were talking Mercedes. And she said, I have this Camry. And I said, Nana, that's an amazing car. I think it's the number one selling car, maybe even in the world. I said, that's an amazing car, but I'll buy you any car you want. And she said, no, this is the car I want. And so I said, are you sure? I tried to dissuade her. Nothing wrong with the Camry, but it's a phenomenal car. Toyota's a phenomenal car, but I really want to treat her something special. She said, nope, this is it. I said, all right, just give me the wiring instructions. I wired the money. And she sent me a picture in front of the car, like this. It was a red Toyota. And then I went to Detroit that summer, where I'm from, and she couldn't wait to show me the car. We get in the car. It's a boiling hot day. And we get in the car, and I said, let's go for a drive. So we get in the car. It's like 130 degrees in the car, right? I'd been sitting in the sun. And so I go to look for the window. There were no power windows. I said, Nana, what's up with the roll-up window? She said, well, that was $400 extra. I'm like, I said, Nana, come on. And that was the third of 4 Camrys that I bought her. And I made sure that they all had the automatic windows next time. But I do think it's important, to treat yourself well. And I hope you're able to do that at some point. Let's talk about, as we wind down, let's talk about a few other things. What do you wish you had known when you were starting out?
I wish I would have known that other people's opinions of you don't matter. And it took me a while. Because I grew up and I worked in kind of this traditional world, right? Where your reputation is so important, and it still is. But I think taking too much to heart what other people say, the criticism that you get, people, and there's something to not really caring at all what people think. Because at the end of the day, the fact, it's clear that if you fail, if you're not successful, if you don't do well, none of the things that you were doing to make sure that you were so well thought of, none of that would matter, right? Because everyone thinks you're stupid and you're dumb and, and you're not successful. And if you do well and do achieve the success that other people, put out, this is whatever success, however you define it. If you do achieve that, then none of it matters either, because you did all the things that you were supposed to do or whatever. So it's like, I would get really worked up about, I need to send this overly, robust update. None of that mattered. And why did I spend my time there when I should have just spent my time full stop focused on building the business? And so for a young entrepreneur, I think, don't get so focused on if an investor is upset or this person doesn't think you're good, or who cares? Who cares? Just keep building and doing all the things that are the right things to do.
What I found after our company went public and I did well financially, there were a lot of people who are really not that happy for you. They think they're better than you. I mean, you're smiling right now. I've talked to a lot of young entrepreneurs. I was 33 years old, and I heard all the chatter. And there are people, by the way, way smarter, way better. Everyone said it was lucky. Well, I've always been the hardest worker wherever I've been. And there isn't anyone who's met me who wouldn't say the opposite of that. And you do create your own luck, but it took me a long time, frankly, because it bothered me. And thankfully, I've been successful in a number of different things I've done where I think someone can't get lucky that many times. And finally, I think I really don't give a shit what people think. And I'm comfortable in my own skin now. But when you're young and so many good things happen, you deserve it. I know you deserve it, but there's a lot of chatter that isn't so fun.
Oh, definitely. But I think, even now, right, there's a power in being underestimated. There's a power in people, someone was joking about, Trina's motto is bet against me. Like, see what happens. And so, there's people that don't believe you can do it, right? Don't believe, to your point, for you, do it again. For us, they don't think we can continue to scale and grow at the rate that we're doing that. So I think there's a lot of power in that because, there's power to having a chip on your shoulder and saying, oh, really? Is that what you think? I'm going to go prove you wrong.
Yeah.
Again.
It's funny because I share that DNA and I challenge people to bet against me. Not that I don't fail, by the way, not that I won't fail, but I'm not going to go down with the ship for trying everything on the planet, but it does motivate me as well. Let's talk about philanthropy. You've talked about it a little bit. I want to break this into two parts. What FIGS is doing to get back and what your plans are on a personal basis. You've talked about what you're doing. The program's called Threads for Threads. Can you tell us about that? And can you also tell us, did Tom's shoes influence part of the idea there?
I mean, actually, no. Heather my co-founder, she's been incredibly philanthropic her whole life. The idea for Threads came from a trip to Vietnam when she was she was actually in college. She was 19 years old with her family, and there were children. It was a Tuesday afternoon. There were children outside of the factory in Vietnam, and they weren't in school. And Heather asked the question, why aren't these kids in school? It's like a Tuesday at 2:00. And they said, well, if they don't have a uniform, they won't go to school. And there's a number of reasons for that. And so Heather, who she went to this factory owner who I believe her father knew at the time and said, hey, can you make me 200 uniforms? And the factory owner said, we could do that. And it was a few dollars each. And Heather took her savings and bought these uniforms to put those kids in school. And that's
Amazing.
actually how the idea originally, and that was about a decade before she came up with the idea for Figs, around getting uniforms to kids so they can go to school. And now we're getting uniforms to healthcare professionals so they can go to work. And so, it's a big part of what we do. It started, Threads for Threads started actually before the company started. And now it's so ingrained into the DNA of all aspects of Figs. And it's evolved into so much more, into monetary donations to different organizations we're passionate about, into, we go on medical missions around the world with a number of different organizations. So there's a lot more to than just donating, but that's a really big part of it as well.
You've given away over 500,000 sets of scrubs in over 35 countries. Very impressive. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
On the personal front, have you made any plans on where you want to focus your philanthropic efforts?
I think for me, there's a few areas that I'm really passionate about. Education. The system is a bit broken in a number of places in this country. And so that's a big passion. I think I love animals. I have a cute, amazing dog. And so
What kind of dog?
He's a Havanese.
Okay.
His name is Jack. But I love animals. And so helping the animals, I'm looking at a number of different places to invest in shelters and helping on that front. And then, I think, like I said, female entrepreneurship in general, but female entrepreneurs, I think the more, you put your money where your mouth is, right? Actually investing those dollars behind incredible women that are building the future and building and disrupting industries, creating new ways of doing business and creating industries is really a passion of mine. And not only do I look to invest in those companies, but I also look to mentor and help female entrepreneurs in any way I can.
Awesome. Before we finish today, I want to go ahead and ask some more open-ended questions. I call this part of my podcast, Fill in the Blank to Excellence. Are you ready to play?
Yes.
All right. When I started my career, I wish I had known.
Oh God, I'm not good at this game. Okay. When I started my career, I wish I would have known to believe in myself more.
The biggest lesson I've learned in my life is?
The biggest lesson I've learned in my life is people mostly care about themselves, so don't care what people think.
My number one professional goal is?
My number one professional goal is to help as many people in their careers as possible.
The person in the world that I admire the most is?
My mom.
If you could meet one person in the world, who would it be?
Adele. She's pretty cool.
Did you see the concert live on
Yes,
HBO?
I didn't see it. I would have rather been in person, but I saw it on HBO. It was great.
I heard it was great. I didn't see it, but someone I actually want to see in concert when that happens again. If I were the president of the United States, the first thing I would do is?
I would never be the president. Oh my God, I would be the worst politician ever. But if I were the president of the United States, the first thing I would do is, ensure that our government, doesn't get involved with our personal lives. Why are we banning abortion?
I agree with that. It'll be interesting to see what happens with these Supreme Court cases that are going to hit the docket
Oh my
soon.
God, it's crazy. It's like,
It is crazy.
where do we go back in time? 100 years?
It's crazy. I don't want the podcast to become political, but I'm not going to let that.
I told you, I'm not even a political person.
But I'm not going to let that one go either.
Yeah.
So I've said my piece on that one. The one question you wish I had asked you is,
Why healthcare professionals?
why healthcare professionals?
Healthcare professionals are the most important people, I think, in this world. And for so long and for too long, nobody's been focused on them. And I think, we call them awesome humans. And it's because, they're people like you and me, and they just so happen to choose a profession that's dedicated to everyone else. And so that's why we're passionate about them. And we hope more people join this profession. And we hope we make it a lot easier. I think there's a lot wrong. We talked about a number of different systems that are broken, but the healthcare system is broken as well. And if we can do our part in changing that and making it easier for healthcare professionals to go out and do their jobs, that will be better for them. And I think it will be better for everyone else in this world.
Do you have any last advice for those listening and watching today before we conclude here?
Excellence is a really fulfilling thing to strive for. And your podcast is called In Search of Excellence. And I think there's nothing better to do than search to be excellent and search to be the best. I always say, like, who wakes up in the morning and thinks, today I'm going to be super mediocre. Today I'm going to phone it in. I'm just going to be average. Nobody does that, right? When you wake up in the morning, you say, today I'm going to be the best I can be. Today I'm going to, blow people's minds. I'm going to do the things others aren't willing to do. I'm going to change the world. And so I think what you're doing and what you're talking about is really important. And excellence is the greatest, one of the best virtues to strive for. So it's an honor to be a part of this. And thank you so much for having me.
Trina, you've had an amazing career. You're a role model to many, many thousands of women and men. And there's no doubt that sharing your story will inspire thousands of others to achieve excellence in their lives. Thank you for being a guest on In Search of Excellence. I'm very grateful to you for sharing your story today.
Thank you so much, Randy. I'll talk to you soon.